Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to your Post-Partner Briefing 2012 webinar today. My name's David Wilson, and I'm going to be your host. Just a little bit of context about who I am. I'm the education or the product specialist within the partner relations team. So if you have attended a webinar with us over the last sort of 6 to 8 months, hopefully you would have heard my voice at some stages. I'm also responsible for some of the content that does get sent out in terms of community forum and newsletters and so forth. So I think it's important to note before we even go into it right now that obviously the AccountRight 2011 program saw probably the largest and most significant software release that we as a company, MIB, has produced in the last 20 years. Now, it was a complete rebuild from the old, for those familiar with databases, AccountRight version 19.5 and below was built around what's called a C-tree database. That had been the technology that had been used right the way through, and we were really reaching the, I suppose, the end to how far we could sort of progress with that. So we needed to have a look at a more up-to-date and revamped technology. So you might be familiar with the SQL database, and that's what the new AccountRight 2011 has been based on. That was obviously released in November, or late last year, around about that mid to late November. Now, upon that release, there is absolutely no doubt around the fact that we received a significant amount of feedback about a number of things in relation to the AccountRight 2011 release. We're going to cover off on a lot of that today. We're also going to see how we as a company, as MIB, has gone about addressing the situation. I think it can be summed up in really one sentence, that it has been a challenging release. Now, hopefully everybody that's attending today, you have had a chance to either have a look at the AccountRight 2011 program. Now, you might not be at the state where you're thinking, yes, I want to recommend all my clients to upgrade to it at this stage, but I think it is important just to have a look at the program and also just to be comfortable, not comfortable, but so you're confident with some of the significant changes that have been made. So what we are going to cover off on today, we're just going to put a bit of context around the release itself of the program, and we're also going to make sure that give you as much information as possible so that you've got the confidence with the AccountRight 2011 program moving forward. So I guess with that in mind, I think it's important to acknowledge some of the common themes that have been sent back or reported back to us here at MIB. And obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously, but if you have had a chance or if you do have any clients that have upgraded to AccountRight 2011, you might have experienced some of these yourself. Some of these have been around the installation of the program. Quite a significant portion have been around performance and speed of the program itself. There's also been a little bit of feedback in some issues encountered when going through the upgrade or the migration process, and that can be either upgrading a company file or migrating things like customized forms across. Also a little bit of concern around the stability of the program. AccountRight 2011 introduced a new concept called what's deemed as the library functionality. Now, a library is really just a dedicated location where your file needs to be stored. Especially from a partner point of view, we have received a significant amount of feedback about that as well. And later on today, we're actually going to have a look at the evolution of the libraries and how they have changed with the subsequent releases for AccountRight 2011. Of course, one of the biggest things going from your version 19.5 or below straight into AccountRight 2011, it is a significant change. And it's not just in terms of how it looks and how it presents. Some of the workflows have certainly been adapted as well. Now, of course, some of that is as a result of some defects within the program itself that may impact some of those workflows, but you might also see some of the workflows have been deliberately changed, and I think that's going to be beneficial down the track. And of course, there's been a little bit of feedback around the usability and some of the issues identified there. So I guess hopefully you're getting a theme with today. It really wants to be as transparent and honest as possible about some of those issues that have been identified with the AccountRight 2011, and probably more importantly, showing exactly what we're doing to address those. So as I touched on, you do have that Q&A panel, so if you do have any questions throughout, as I said, I'll do my very best to acknowledge those and answer those throughout the presentation itself. So I guess that the next thing to acknowledge is, okay, obviously the AccountRight 2011 was released. We received quite a significant amount of feedback around it, and what have we done about it thus far? So here we are getting towards the end of February. As soon as it was released, as I touched on, that was around November. We committed to making available at minimum 3 service packs. Now, I am pleased to say that please don't think that this is going to be the end of any update that you see for the AccountRight 2011, because I can absolutely categorically say that it won't be. Gone are the days, I suppose, where you'll be used to seeing, say, one update from MIB and then perhaps a compliance update, depending on if it impacted your payroll or not. Those days are well and truly behind us. what I suppose one of the key learnings, and that's a term you'll hear me say throughout today's webinar, has been that with the change of platform, it does give us that flexibility to push out or make available updates and also bug fixes in a significantly quicker manner. And I think that can be highlighted by the fact that Service Pack 1, which was released around that December mark, did come out and it did address some of the installation issues and some of the usability defects that were reported to us. It's also important to acknowledge that upon the release of the AccountRight 2011 program, there was also a number of reports that weren't finalised at that stage. So of course Service Pack 1 went a long way to addressing that and did produce, I think it was around about 32 reports to bring it up to speed with the previous releases. Service Pack 2 was the next one that was made available, and that was made available towards the end of January. And again, the primary focus of that was to address some of the installation issues that we had encountered, some of the performance improvements that hopefully you'll start to see. Now, of course, it wasn't a primary focus of Service Pack 2, but it certainly was one of the focuses. So hopefully if you had a look at the AccountRight 2011 around that November stage and felt that the performance was not up to what your expectations were going to be and you decided against upgrading it, which is fine, I would recommend to go back and have a look. And the reason why I say that is because at the conclusion of either late this week or early next week, you will see the availability of Service Pack 3. So Service Pack 3, the primary focus around Service Pack 3 is all about the performance. So hopefully you're really going to start to see some enhancements and some of the time that it has taken to whether it be record transactions or some of those workflow tidbits that a lot of people would be used to utilising. Hopefully you'll start to see some of those addressed. So I would recommend if you were holding out to have a look or get reacquainted with the AccountRight 2011, do pop in and download it and have a look and make sure you do update it to Service Pack 3. Now, of course, that being said, as I said, the original commitment was to those 3 service packs. But, of course, now that we've seen the success and how easy they are, well, I shouldn't say how easy because there's obviously a lot of technology that goes in behind it, but how quickly we can make those available, you are going to see a more ongoing impact here. So you're going to start to see, and we can't commit to, I'm not certainly going to sit here and say you're going to receive one every month or anything along those lines, but in terms of little enhancements, little bug fixes that you can see, that's going to be the idea moving forward. And I think probably the key component about the service packs and obviously the ability to release those updates going down the track is going to be that ability to respond to client and partner feedback for the whole version of the AccountRight. So I guess just looking back, and that's just a very brief introduction of sort of what we've covered off on and what we're going to expand on throughout today's webinar, I guess I can say to you that we are 100% committed to this product. AccountRight 2011 is a flagship product for MYOB. As I said, the change in the database structure and the technology used there was a significant change, and obviously we're encountering some speed humps in the earlier releases of those. But I can absolutely categorically tell you, everybody that's attending today and anybody that does listen to the webinar as well down the track, that we are 100% committing to listening and resolving as many of these issues as quickly as possible, and I'm confident that we will. I think it is important to acknowledge at this point as well, whilst the AccountRight 2011 program was released in November last year, and obviously has been made available to anybody that has an active business support subscription, it does not necessarily mean they have to go ahead and upgrade straight away. We will absolutely be supporting and the ongoing support of our version 19, version 19.5 for any compliance changes or anything that are required. There will definitely be updates for those, certainly for the 2012-2013 financial year. So I guess our position on that in terms of, okay, well, who is AccountRight version? Who is right to upgrade to AccountRight version 2011? The response to that is you guys are at the coalface. So if you have clients that you feel will get a benefit from upgrading to some of those new features in AccountRight version 2011, I would say 100% back your judgment. You know exactly what they're doing. Some of the higher end or power users or super users, you do have some clients that are, sit there and answer, say, 1,000 invoices a week, that sort of thing, and there certainly are some, or if you do it on behalf of your clients, that's someone that perhaps I would sit down, assess it, perhaps even take a copy of their file, especially after the release of Service Pack 3, and go through and just do a trial, because at the bigger the file, we have seen that's where some of the performance issues are. So again, that is essentially at the end of the day, our position is for our clients, if they feel that there's going to be a benefit for upgrading to the AccountRight 2011, then certainly do so. but it also means to follow your judgment. If I had a client, I would certainly be checking with my partner before going ahead and upgrading to version 2011. And we've tried to make that as clear as possible on all of our communications that have gone out as well, to make sure that the program is 100% right for the client or for them. Now, of course, that takes into account existing clients. So what happens if you do have a new client that goes out to the store, purchase the AccountRight 2011 off the shelf? They also have the ability or the flexibility to call up MYB, and they can certainly request a version 19.5 if they choose to, or if you recommend for them to do so. They don't need a letter of recommendation or anything like that. They simply call up, and because of the activation and confirmation system that's in place for MYB or an AccountRight, that means that they'll be able to utilise anything that's lower. So AccountRight 2011 might have been a product that they purchased and the CD that they received from the retail outlet. What they can then do is request to have version 19.6, or you can download it through your my.myb and install it at the client's place, and they can successfully use it. As long as it does correlate. So if they've purchased AccountRight 2011 Plus, make sure that you do install Plus. And the same for Standard and, of course, Business Basics. And now just going to give you a little bit of context around the AccountRight 2011 release, how many people have gone ahead and downloaded, and sort of how the current status. Do keep in mind that the figures that we're having a look at here are a combination of Australia and New Zealand clients. So the first thing to acknowledge there is that it certainly was that MYB delivered AccountRight Standard, AccountRight Basics and AccountRight Plus. Now AccountRight Basics was made available mid last year, around that June-July period, with of course the Standard and Plus being the release in that mid-November. As I touched on during the introduction, it certainly was a significant change for existing clients, and what I suppose the key learnings and what we've learnt from, we as a company have learnt from that, is that we really do need to make sure that we take into account and take into consideration a lot of those workflows that have been set up in the 20 years or so that MYB and version 19.5 and below have been made available. And a great example of that is along some of the shortcut keys that you might experience. You might have your own way of going through and clicking into invoices and then moving between lines, and some of that may have changed from version 19.5 into the 2011. And a good example that we have seen is the use of, say, the down arrow. When you get to the end of the line, at version 2011, if you click the down, it actually takes you to the far left-hand side of the next line instead of dropping to immediately below the field that you're in. Now again, that's something that obviously people have built into their workflow, and we'll see that a lot of the feedback that we have received has been around the workflow, and that it can take a little bit longer now to do certain tasks than what it previously has in version 19.5. And that down arrow is a good example of it. Now that is something that we're aware of and hoping to address in future releases. So how many people thus far have gone in and had a look and upgraded to the AccountRight version 2011? So based on the data that we have from our internal databases, we're tracking at over 10,000 users that have installed the new version. At the moment, it's roughly around about that 12,000 mark. And as I touched on, that is across Australia and New Zealand. So what does that mean in terms of our entire customer base? In real terms, it's only just 1% of our customer base. So I suppose when it was released, there were certainly some of those areas that were missing, and that's why we tried to make it as clear as possible to make sure you understand, or as the client understands, to make sure this program is right for them prior to upgrading. You can see there, it's sort of just actively engaged only a small number of our end users. Now, of course, in terms of that, you would have heard or seen on various different forums, or perhaps even through interactions with your colleagues, or even interactions with MYB ourselves. Hopefully you would have seen that there was some negativity around the release and some of the changes and some of the feedback, some of the issues that were encountered. So looking at the stats that we were able to produce, around about 10% of the clients that have installed have had significant issues. Now, obviously, we're looking at 10% of 1% of our client base. Does that mean we're happy with that? Absolutely not. That is far too high for a new release for people to be having. So what are the key learnings that we've taken out of that? The workflow situation, as I touched on, the using of that down arrow, things like your quick keys, the use of the enter button, little things like that have changed since the release of AccountRight 2011. They're the things that we're receiving loud and clear from both our partners and our end clients alike. And of course, the big one is the performance. We've certainly heard a lot of people talking about how much longer it does take for certain tasks that have now increased because they've upgraded to the AccountRight 2011. Are we happy with that? Absolutely not. We want to make sure that the AccountRight 2011 is an exciting and a positive experience for anybody that upgrades to it. Now, I don't think at this stage we're quite there yet, but I certainly hope that with the release of the Service Pack number 3 coming out, that it's going to go a long way to addressing some of those concerns. You'll probably also find that if you do have any of your clients, and we have found that these are a lot of the clients that don't actively engage our partners, if you do have any clients that are only small data entry users, such as you might have, say, a plumber or an electrician or someone along those lines that don't literally have to sit down and enter 100 invoices a day, they might just build it up and sit down on the weekend and knock it all over in an hour. So it might be the case that they just sit down and enter 10 invoices perhaps and then go about their business. It's that, to be perfectly honest, that caters for a significant portion of our customer base, and it's here that the people have had a pleasing experience with AccountRight 2011. Now, again, we want to make sure that we get that AccountRight 2011 up to a standard that everybody's having a positive experience. And the key component there is obviously with the release of our AccountRight Live, our online solution further down the year, we want to make sure that our desktop product is 100% before we go down that path. And you're going to see, if you do attend tomorrow's webinar, you're going to see a complete change in the way that we go about making that AccountRight online program or the AccountRight online pilot available to partners and end users alike. It's going to be an absolute thorough beta, or I shouldn't say beta, but a thorough testing of the program in a market-ready environment to make sure it is 100% and it's a positive experience for everybody that upgrades to it. So at the end of the day, the key learning is that we needed to address, or we needed to assess the way that we went about both our internal and external testing, and you're going to see the benefits of that with the AccountRight Live pilot later on in the year. So that's what I was more referring to there with the key learnings as such. A lot of those are going to be have the practical implication when you do get to your a bit closer to around that May-June period when we're having a look at launching the AccountRight Live pilot. And again, a lot more of that information will be coming in tomorrow's webinar. And the key component about the whole thing is to ensure, because we're having the best of both worlds with a desktop installation as well as a cloud-based solution, we absolutely need to make sure that our desktop-based solution is performing up to the optimum standard that everyone's going to have an online experience that makes them want to come back for more. So that's the key component, and that's what we have taken out of the AccountRight 2011 release thus far. So what we're now going to go in and have a bit more of an in-depth look at is some of the changes that the service packs have some of the changes that the service packs have delivered. So I did mention at the start when we went through the introduction that the first service pack came out in January, and I'm hopeful that everybody's had a chance to at least have a look or was aware that those service packs were coming out. The second one, of course, came in February, with the third one slated for, the second one came in January, with the third one slated for February. So we're looking at an early next week release. It is in the final stages of testing, just to make sure that it flows through and behaves as expected. But we should be, at the moment, we're slated for early to mid next week. So hopefully you guys will be able to download and have a look at it. You'll also see in the timeline that we've got on the screen there that even though Service Pack 3, as I touched on, was all it was committed to originally, that's certainly not the end. So in terms of the updates, it might be a slight change in the terminology that's used. It might not be Service Pack 4, Service Pack 5, and then you see AccountRight 2012 with Service Pack 1, Service Pack 2. It might be renamed to a specific update, or it might be AccountRight 2011.1.5. That hasn't been determined yet, but you are certainly going to see more and more of these updates. Now, when I say more and more of these updates, not to the point where you'll be getting them on a weekly basis or anything along those lines, but it certainly does give us that chance to, whether it be quarterly or even 6 weeks or as needed, I think is going to be the key component there. So as required, you are going to be able to experience and get up to date with the AccountRight 2011 program. So what's changed? Now, of course, the first thing about the service packs to take into account was the addition of the first batch of report packs. So what that meant, and this is another great example, a terrific example of some of the partner-led feedback that we have received in terms of the AccountRight 2011 release. If you do remember back to when the original November release of AccountRight 2011, a PDF was produced that did indicate a number of reports that would be missing, that would be coming in AccountRight 2011. There are also a number of reports that had been essentially removed because they were low-use reports. Now, we received a significant amount of feedback from partners and end users alike, that largely from the partner channels, that there was a from an Australian point of view, so it didn't necessarily impact New Zealand, but again, it was a great example around a report called the Payroll Register Report. It said, no, we absolutely need this. So what we did, we responded to that feedback and added it to that report pack that was included in the Service Pack 1. So, of course, the other intention of the service packs is to address some of those performance concerns, and as I said, that is certainly the primary focus of Service Pack number 3, which we're going to have a look at in a bit more detail. The good thing about the service packs is that it doesn't just give us the chance to go ahead and as I said, fix up defects and bugs that have come through, because ideally we'd like to be in a situation where there were no bugs. Now, I think everyone acknowledged that it is accounting software, and there's more than likely going to be some in there. Obviously, at the moment, we feel that there are too many, so we'd like the service pack's primary focus not to necessarily be around defect fixing, but we'd really like to see them coming through and adding those little enhancements and usability fixes. I shouldn't say fixes, but usability enhancements that people have requested for quite a number of years. I think a great example of that has been around some of the customised form designer enhancements. And again, we're going to go into the program and have a look at some of those in just a moment's time. Another terrific example of feedback and addressing the feedback was around the library enhancements. Now, we are going to have a look at this in a bit more detail in a moment as well, but the library, as I touched on earlier, is an area of concern that a lot of partners did raise. So we're going to have a look at the evolution of those libraries as we've moved through each service pack. And of course, the service packs themselves did address a number of reported issues that have come through to MYOB via various channels. So the first of these enhancements that we are going to have a look at are the evolutions of the library concept that was introduced with AccountRight 2011. First of all, if you haven't had a chance to install or have a look at the AccountRight 2011, a new concept has been introduced, and that is of this library. So what is the library? Library is a dedicated location where data files need to be stored in order for AccountRight 2011 to successfully run. In the original release of AccountRight 2011, this was unable to be modified. So the path itself was dictated by the release, and that couldn't be adjusted. You could create or manually create separate subfolders within the library structure itself, but you couldn't tell MYOB where to move that library to. You could simply create folders underneath that, and again, we'll have a look at that in a moment, but keep in mind that you couldn't actually change the structure of that library. So it was through your users, into your MYOB, into your public documents, into MYOB, My AccountRight files in there. We'll have a look at that firsthand when I cross to the program in just a moment's time. Initially, it could not be relocated. Service Pack 1. So when Service Pack 1 was released, it did deliver the option to actually modify or change the library itself. So this could be done by running a number of commands through your Start menu. Now, obviously, that's a little bit messy and probably not an ideal situation, especially for those people that aren't confident going through running DOS prompts and so forth. So what we have now introduced with Service Pack 2 is that it can be used it can be moved just by utilising a utility that's located within your Start menu. We're going to go in and have a look at this firsthand. So what I'm now going to do, I'm just going to swap from the presentation itself into the program. So you might experience that 5 to 10 second lag. Please don't be concerned, as I will make sure I take that time before continuing on. So you can see I've just opened up my AccountRight 2011 program. I'm just going to click on to open, and this now takes me into the library structure that I've got. So you can see in here that I've actually created, and this was due to a number of previous webinars and just for testing purposes, a number of different folders that I have created within my library structure itself. So you can see I've created Client A, Client B, Client C, all the way through to Client H, as well as a number of other different folders that I wanted to set up within my structure. So that could have been done in the original release. That's fine. It was just the location of this library wasn't able to be adjusted. So let's now just pop in and have a look where that is. So if you just go into your documents, into MYOB, My AccountRight files. So we're just looking at Windows Explorer now. So I just went into Documents, or Public Documents, MYOB, My AccountRight files. You see that I was able to create these folders in here. So if I wanted to make any manual adjustments or create subfolders in here, I could certainly do that. You'll also note that I was able to store PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, and anything else that I wanted to pop in here. So what I'm now going to do, I'm just going to close out of that. So this is where my library currently is. So I'm just going to close down my AccountRight. Now, with the installation of Service Pack 2, if I just click into my Start menu, up to All Programs, into MYOB, into MYOB AccountRight Plus, you see I've got an option here now, Set Library Location. So similar to how you used to be able to access the optimization assistant through the Start menu, it's the same principle. Now if I click into here, it just comes up with a small warning message, just making sure that I do close all my applications, including AccountRight. And it also tell me that I do need to make sure that the library location that I'm about to select is on a local drive. So the key component there is to make sure that the library's location, or wherever you want to store your company files, it does have the ability to install AccountRight 2011 there. That is the key component. That's the rule of thumb. If you can install AccountRight 2011 there, yes, you can store your data files and move your library to it. So I'm just going to click OK to that. It then brings up a little screen that you can see at the moment. And that's just saying Set Library Location. So it's asking me, do I want to select a new location for the AccountRight library on this computer? You'll need to move all your files from your current library into this new location. So if I just click on Browse here, it's now asking me where do I want to pop it to. So what I might do, I'm just going to my computer, into my local disk, and here's one that I set up earlier. You see that I've got my library file there. So what I can now do, if I click OK, if I click Set Location, what that means is I'm now telling AccountRight to look into this location that I've got on the screen to find my AccountRight files. What it does also mean is that in order for that to work successfully, I would need to move the files across into this new location. So that can be done with two methods. One, you can go through Windows Explorer and manually copy your .myox files into this new location. Or two, you can simply do it straight from the welcome screen itself. And I'll show you how to do that right now. So I'm actually not going to set this just for the time being, because I'm just going to click Cancel there. And I'm just going to reopen my AccountRight 2011. And what you're going to see, it still has my existing library structure set there. If I click on Open, but you'll see down the bottom here, now how do I move my library structure? And the reason why I didn't was because I've actually got one set up for my online environment at the moment, so it was going to impact that. So I wish I could go through that firsthand, but if you get the grasp of what we're doing, that's the most important thing. You will see that I've got the ability here to add a company file. So I can just add a company file, and what that does is take a copy of my file and moves it into the library itself. So this is also a great way of moving it from a USB if you are faced with that situation, if you're moving from client to your office and office to your clients or something along those lines. Using your add a company file option is going to go a long way to making it easier. So again, it's a great example of feedback that has been delivered and how these service packs and product updates are going to enhance the experience that you and your clients will have with AccountRight 2011. What I'm now going to do, I'm just going to go back from the actual program back into the presentation itself. Hopefully everybody's now caught up. So you can see that evolution of the libraries has come a long way from being preset and structured and unable to be adjusted through to being adjusted in a slightly circuitous manner in terms of the Start menu and running your command prompts through there, through to having that nice easy utility just under your Start, All Programs, MYOB, and into your Set Library Location. So again, you can see how that evolution is going, and I suppose it gives a good blueprint for some of the enhancements that we can deliver down the track. Also, in terms of the report, I nearly said report back, in terms of the service packs that have been delivered, you will see some enhancements to the new Forms Designer. Now, obviously, I would argue that the two biggest areas that have changed, certainly from I suppose what you'd be used to in the version 19 and below through to the AccountRight, are the Reports Engine and the new Customized Forms Designer. So the new Customized Forms Designer, because of the new structure of the database, gives us the ability to adjust some of the columns and some nice little neat tricks like that. They've always been there. However, in the original release of AccountRight 2011, in the columns themselves, so if you had a table, like let's say an item invoice table, you weren't able to go in and customize those columns. So if you wanted, say, the price to come up in italics, or you wanted the GST amount to be in bold, it didn't have that flexibility to do that. Again, based on the feedback that we received, it was acknowledged that that was an important feature that really did need to be there. So once these service packs have been delivered, or in the service packs that have thus far been delivered, there have been these enhancements added in. So you can certainly change the alignment of the text within the columns themselves. You can format the column header text, so that's the text running across the top of a column itself. You can add a background colour. So a good example of that is if you just wanted the, I suppose, the item price or the item description, for instance, to be in a different colour of the column itself, you can certainly do that now. Okay, I'm just looking at my screen now, back into the AccountRight. I'm just going to go into my Clearwater file. Just sign in as I normally would. And just go into my forms, go into Setup, into Customise Forms. I think a good example, we'll go into invoices because they're probably the more commonly used, into the item invoice, and let's just have a look at, say, tax inclusive plain paper. Click on Customise. What I'm going to show you is how some of these columns, just going to maximise that so everybody can see it. So within the table down here, in the early versions, we weren't actually able to go in and modify these columns. We were always able to extend them out if we wanted to, so make them bigger, wider, that sort of thing. But the field properties, so this area here, bold, italics, underline, the colours and so forth, that was actually not able to be utilised with a column itself highlighted. That has now changed. So now, for instance, within the price column, if I wanted to put in, say, a background colour, let's make that one red, you see that I'm able to do that. In the description, if I wanted to make that italics, you'll see that the example description that I've got on the screen now goes into italics for me. I'm also going to bold it and underline, our three favourites, so that you can see now that description, whatever the item description is going to come through bold, italics, with the underline going through it. All the price, we're going to go through with the red. So again, it just gives us that ability to go through and add these little enhancements and these little bits of flexibility that perhaps weren't there at the start. And that's the beauty of the actual service packs themselves. And again, and that's why we do encourage all our partners, if you do have feedback around the AccountRight 2011, so please do send it through to us. And there's a number of mechanisms in place. You can, through our website, actually send some feedback straight through. And of course, there's always the use of the community forum, which is monitored by both staff and managers alike here at MYB. So that's probably the best way to go ahead and do so. So what I'm now going to do, I'm just going to close out of the program itself, and we'll go back and finish off the presentation. Of course, the service packs themselves also resolved a number of issues. Now, what you see on the screen is just a very, I suppose, tip of the iceberg selection of some of the issues that have been resolved. Initially, we received some reports that the aged receivables and payables reports, when they were displaying, depending on the size and if it was close to the minimum specs, may cause the system to crash, or cause MYB to crash and have to restart before getting that information. This was investigated, identified and addressed, and of course that has been fixed in the subsequent service packs. There's also some issues with the missing link accounts that did become apparent when upgrading from version 19.5 into the AccountRight 2011. Again, this was investigated, made sure that the situation was replicated exactly as described, and then we addressed that and made sure that was one of the fixes. A couple of the other migration issues that did come up were also resolved in the service packs themselves. A couple of other small things just to be aware of in the original releases, you weren't actually able to email to someone who had a hyphen in their domain name. So if the email address had a hyphen there, unfortunately MYOB would come back with a generic error saying that couldn't be done. Again, that was investigated, researched and addressed. So again, you can sort of see how quickly we are responding to a lot of these issues, and of course that's going to be, I suppose, the blueprint moving forward. So installing these updates that I've just been talking about. So one of the key components here, and one of the questions that's almost always raised in both the briefings and webinars alike, is will the current service pack be inclusive of the issues that were addressed in the previous service pack? It is a resounding yes. So for instance, if you were to, if yourself or your client was to purchase AccountRight 2011 from one of the retail channels, they obviously get their disc. If they were to go ahead and install that, all you need to do is download the most recent service pack, and that will be inclusive of all the enhancements and benefits of the service packs preceding it. So say next week, if you had someone that purchased it today, I'd probably hold out to downloading the update until early next week when Service Pack 3 is available. That way you get the benefits of Service Pack 3, 2 and 1, all in one. Of course, the next question to that is all of the installers, once it is made available, or once a service pack is made available, all the installers on my.myb are updated to include the service packs. So for instance, if you had someone that that had purchased perhaps straight from MYOB and were awaiting their CD to be delivered, you could download your version from your my.MYOB and install that. That would be the most up-to-date and the easiest way to go about it. A couple of little tips just in terms of installing the service pack updates itself. Always do make sure that AccountRight 2011 is closed when installing the updates. That has always been a fairly common trend, that if we have had a release in the past, we'd always recommend to make sure AccountRight was closed. That is vitally important for the AccountRight 2011 release. If you do have any troubles, or if you are experiencing some issues using under the help menu, going into check for updates, and you might be receiving perhaps an error 1300 or 13,000, please do have a look through the start menu itself. So if you do receive a message that comes up or an error message through the help menu, there have been a number of reported instances of this occurring. It is an issue that we are investigating with FlexNet, who deliver our updates for us. At the moment, the best thing to do, if you do receive it, just close out of the message and close down AccountRight. Go into your start menu in that same area that we found that set library location, because you do have the ability to check for updates there. That will 99% of the time solve the problem, and you'll see any updates that are available for yourself or your client. And of course, because it is specific to the installation, any update does need to be completed on each workstation where AccountRight 2011 is installed. So on the screen at the moment, I've just got the current file version number and the version that will come up under your help and about. So this is for Service Pack 2, which, as I said, at the moment is the most up-to-date. Next week, that will change to Service Pack 3. So it's probably the easiest way to look at it, rather than trying to remember the file version numbers like 2011, 0.1, 0.13, 0.6212. Just have a look at the final words there. It will say Service Pack 2, and if they're only up to Service Pack 1, it will say Service Pack 1. So the best thing to do is just under your help and about, as you would have checked any of the previous releases. You'll see down the bottom there, I also did mention that you can see that if you do receive that error 13,000, then please don't try and uninstall or reinstall straight away. Do go down the path of attempting to check for those updates through the start menu, through all programs into MYOB. You have heard me mention quite a number of times throughout today's seminar the Service Pack 3 and the availability of that. As I touched on, it will be early next week that we're aiming to have that available to all clients. The primary focus is around the performance themselves. So that's going to be, let's try and make sure that the inventory areas, that when you're entering spend monies, large recurring transactions, things like that, are going through seamlessly, rather than a little bit sluggish that some users are experiencing at the moment. There also will be some defect resolution within the Service Pack 3, and that's going to be fairly common and fairly standard with a lot of the updates that you do see. The other thing that we are looking at implementing for the release of this is more detailed release notes for our partners. So that's for you guys. We are looking to have a document set up. So there will be release notes with Service Pack 3 that will obviously go to all end users, and it will talk about some of the issues that are addressed. Based on the feedback that we have received here in the partner relations team, is that you guys want to see a more detailed error log, so you can sort of see, okay, what was the error that has been fixed? Is my client experiencing that? And if that's the case, we can just simply go through Service Pack 3 or upload Service Pack 3 and address those issues. So you will see a document that will be made available upon the release of Service Pack 3, partners only, that will give you a more in-depth description on the issues that are being addressed. You'll also start to hear, and this is probably more from myself, more frequent webinars. We are aiming to run webinars on a fortnightly basis. Now these are going to be based around various different things around the AccountRight Live pilot. They're going to be product based, and there's also going to be little bits and pieces around, say, some of the partner resources and use of things like the having a look at the Atlas that was also launched during the partner briefings, and also using the community forum and various different other resources that are available to you. So you are going to start to see more frequent webinars that are going to be available for all partners. So you can see that was pretty well all we wanted to cover today in terms of the product update itself. Now, I would encourage everybody, I think the important things to take away from today, and also from the partner briefings last week, were, one, the key learnings at MYOB that we have learnt from the release of AccountRight 2011. It's important, yes, we do acknowledge that there's certainly some issues around the AccountRight 2011, certainly some issues around the product and the release itself. Now, I've gone through a lot of what we're going to do and what we're intending to do in terms of addressing those and what we have already done, and also the learnings that we're taking from that into the AccountRight Live pilot. So the key learning is really to make sure that this desktop product is 100% ready to go before we get into the cloud itself. So the other thing to take into account or to take away from today, and hopefully you got a little bit more information around the AccountRight 2011 product itself, is to, if you haven't given it a chance since the AccountRight November release, please do go back, and I would recommend, even for the purposes of your own education, to get a feel for the program, because I can't stress enough, this is our flagship, and we are 100% confident that we're going to get this right, and this is something that we are certainly very, very, down the track, we're hoping to be very, very proud of, and making sure that we get as many people with a positive experience as possible. So what I'd like to say is thank you very much for your time. I hope you did get a little bit out of the product update itself. And again, good luck with anybody that you do upgrade, and good luck with MYB in the future as well. Thank you for your time, guys. Cheers.